You have to learn to manage your time. You have to be self-aware. You have to understand the difference between urgent and important.
Andrew, thank you for joining us here today.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
For people that do not know who you are, could you please tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yes, of course I can. So I'm Andrew Bloch. I am a specialist in PR and marketing. I am probably most well known for founding a PR agency called Frank, which has gone on to become one of the most famous and successful PR agencies in the UK and overseas. And I stepped back from that a few years ago. I now run Andrew Bloch Associates, which is a consulting firm specializing in marketing services. And I advise all different agencies of various shapes and sizes on how to grow, how to succeed, how to exit, amongst other stuff, which hopefully we'll come on to talk about.
Awesome. So before we get straight on to that, I'd like to go back in time. So right when you graduated from university, what made you want to work in PR?
It's a good question. And probably the truth of it is that I didn't really know what PR was, and I didn't really have much awareness of it. I'd always set my heart on going into advertising. And the short version of the story is that I was finding it very tough to get that break in advertising. I was going for interviews, long, sort of arduous processes. Whilst doing that, I was getting bored. I just wanted to work. And someone, my mother will claim it was her, said, why don't you try PR? It's similar to advertising. So I wrote off to a whole load of PR agencies. I ended up getting work experience at a firm called Lynn Frank, it's a very famous agency of its time, fell in love with it on day one. And that's where my sort of love affair with PR began.
And what was your first job in PR?
So the first job, as I said, was working for Lynn Frank. So I started off doing a work placement, which was quite a common route to get into the industry. After a few weeks, they liked me and they offered me a job. Lynn Franks was a very famous agency in the fashion and entertainment world. It was actually the agency that Absolutely Fabulous, the sitcom, was based on. And it was a crazy place. And they were doing stuff for London Fashion Week, for the BAFTAs, for the British Fashion Awards, lots of famous designers, celebrities. I worked in the non-glamorous bit. This was big corporate clients, people like BT, Lloyds Bank, Coca-Cola, that wanted to align their brands with entertainment, fashion, sport, music. That's what I did. So my first big client was BT. I was also working for Coca-Cola. I was working for Lloyds Bank on their sponsorship of the BAFTAs. And it was a great start to my career. This was the bit of the agency that made the most money. It was the most commercial. And as I said, I fell in love with it on day one. I loved the pace of it. I loved the adrenaline of taking an idea and seeing that get into the media the next day. And I progressed my career from there. The MD of the agency left after I'd been there a couple of years. The agency got acquired by a much bigger international organisation, which I went on to sort of be a part of that merger. I headed up their sport and entertainment division. And then a couple of years into that, my original boss said, do you fancy setting up a PR agency? To which I initially said no, actually. I didn't feel that I was ready. I'd done sort of 5 years and I felt I wanted to get a bit more experience under my belt. And he said, I don't think you're ever going to feel ready. Let's just do it. So after a bit of persuasion, I agreed to do it. And that was the start of Frank. And that was in 2000. We started very humbly, the two of us, actually three of us, initially sat around a desk, no clients. Initial clients were friends and family and people, I think, that felt sorry for us. And gradually we built the agency up and up and up. We opened offices in Australia, in America, various places in the UK, initially London, then Manchester, then Glasgow. We sold the agency 7 years into a big Australian marketing services group. We then got a piece of the agency back a few years later, as part of a negotiation which allowed us to stay with the agency. Fast forward a number of years, we did a management buyout of the agency to bring it back to independence. And now the agency is fully independent again. In terms of myself personally, when we got to 20 years in, I felt this itch to scratch. I guess it was my entrepreneurial itch. So I stepped back from the firm. initially as a non-exec. Now I'm not a non-exec. I'm just a shareholder in the firm, and it runs very, very well without me. And I'm doing my own thing and advising lots of other companies. I've founded other agencies via investment. I'm helping buying and sell agencies. Still do a bit of PR. I look after Lord Sugar, the host of The Apprentice, and his businesses, helping them set up, create a brand, generate PR. I'm helping advise other firms on what they can be doing. But yeah, really enjoying this next stage of my career and being able to help others who've been in the same place that I was all those years ago.
It's amazing to see how much you've been able to accomplish since founding that agency, and yet alone being able to open different markets around the world and branches as well. I wanted to ask, what has been your proudest moment from your time at Frank?
I mean, there's lots of proud moments. It's really hard to sort of narrow it down. In terms of the work, I think I was always proudest of the latest thing. But, when I look back over the years, we did some pretty incredible things. We launched Call of Duty. We made it biggest entertainment launch in history. We built the Compare the Meerkat character, Alexander Orloff, who's gone on to become very, very famous. We won lots of awards for our work, including a Cannes Lion for work we did in Australia for Durex, which I'd always wanted to win a Cannes Lion. That to me was like the pinnacle of creative acknowledgement. I think selling the agency was a major milestone, not necessarily for the money, although that was very nice. It was more someone externally was placing a value on something that you'd created, which was a great feeling, of a great achievement. But actually, when I've really thought about it, and I've only really thought about it since exiting the business, I think the thing I'm proudest of is the careers of all the different people that came through the doors that we've helped promote and project. And if you look in the PR industry today, there are so many exceptional people that came through Frank and are now running their own agencies that they've launched, or are MDs of other big firms, and, seeing their success. And I'm not taking, all the credit for their success. They were clearly great people, but having had some sort of impact on them that's allowed them, motivated them to go on and achieve great success. For me, I don't know whether I would call it a legacy, but it's the thing I'm proudest of. And it's where I spend as much time as I can now helping to promote the careers of people that are trying to get into the industry or at the early stages of their industry. And I sit now as a mentor for people like the School of Communication Arts, the School of Marketing, really helping to advise young people on how they can get breaks in their career, because it's a hard industry to get into, but once you're in, and if you're good, you will propel quickly. So I think that's the thing if I was going to narrow it down to one thing, that's probably the thing that I'm proudest of.
I'm very impressed by the achievements you've had throughout your time at Frank and your career. And now I want to contradict that and ask, what's been one particular moment at first was difficult, but you've taken that as a lesson or a blessing in disguise that has propelled you to greater success later on in your career?
That's a good question. I think, one of the things you have to possess to be good in this career is resilience. And, there are lots of ups and downs. My mantra has always been, don't get too high on the highs, don't get too low on the lows. So when we won a pitch, we'd celebrate for 5 minutes and then be on to the next one. Same when we lost a pitch. There've been bigger moments when not everything worked out. When we launched in America, that was tough. And we made a decision after a few years to shut down that office, which was a difficult moment. It was the right thing to do. And it actually wasn't a complete disaster. It was making money. It was more that it was a distraction from other offices and other priorities. And we just looked at it and made that decision. There were times where we were going through rapid growth, and the confidence was so high, we'd almost walk into a pitch. I knew we'd won it before we'd opened our mouths. That was incredible. But that moment didn't last forever, and we hit a point where it was becoming more difficult, and we weren't winning everything, and things were starting to slow down. And that was tough, and you have to dig deep not beat yourself up about it, but just fight that little bit harder, show that little bit more energy, make sure the work was that little bit better, and we were able to sort of come out of that period. But I don't think it's individual to PR or marketing. I think within any industry, for any entrepreneur or business founder, or even someone working within an organization, you're going to hit difficult moments. Life is always a kind of winding path. It's not necessarily a straight road. And sometimes you look at other founders, especially in the era of social media, when you're looking on LinkedIn or Instagram, TikTok, and you see these great stories and it's all glossy and it's shiny, but actually, you're looking at someone's showreel. The reality is there's a behind the scenes video, which is full of bloopers and mistakes and ups and downs. And that is part of doing business. And I know it's a cliche to say, you learn from your failures and you grow stronger and what doesn't break you and all that kind of stuff. It is true. It is true to a degree. And you always have to learn from those mistakes. And I never mind if people make mistakes that when they're working with me, as long as they learn from them and don't make the same mistake again. But you've got to be tough. You can't let one defeat, one loss, one mishap derail you. It's a bit like a sports team. Sometimes a football team can, they go into a game, they don't even play that well, but they win. They find something within them to get the goal and to come back. But equally, sometimes a football team can play really well and they just don't get the break. They're not clinical enough. They lose every game. And the key to that is getting yourself into that winning pattern of behaviour again. And you've got to do that as quickly as you possibly can. And that takes a bit of strength, a bit of resilience, a bit of self-awareness, learning from what you did wrong and correcting your course as soon as you can. So, yeah, sure, I've had my ups and downs, but generally things don't keep me awake at night. I've never been down for too long. I've never made, I would say I'm actually quite risk adverse, although I'm entrepreneurial and do lots of different things. I approach them with caution, I think. And I always look at worst case scenarios, don't go into things blindly, try and minimize the risk of things going wrong by sticking to what I know, dealing with people I like, dealing with people that I enjoy working with and respect. But of course, not everything works out. And that's part of being an entrepreneur. It's part of doing business.
Is there a key takeaway you've taken as an entrepreneur? Because I love how you keep referring back to you being an entrepreneur, this entrepreneurial mindset, because I don't think they get a lot of credit for what they go through. I mean, it's all about the successes we see on the screen, but we don't really see what goes on behind the scene, the lack of sleep, the dedication, the failures. So what is one piece of advice you also tend to give to youngsters about being an entrepreneur or what success looks like?
Well, I think there's a few pieces of advice I'd probably give. But firstly, don't be scared of hard work and don't believe overnight success stories. Unless you win the lottery or inherit your grandfather's estate, you don't become a multimillionaire overnight. It takes lots of hours, lots of dedication, lots of sacrifices. I think, second of all, find something you enjoy, find something you know about, find something where you can potentially have a bit of an advantage and stick to it. Have a bit of perseverance, have a bit of grit and enjoy it, enjoy the process. But there are sacrifices. And, I started relatively young. I definitely sacrificed relationships, friends, nights out, late nights, in the name of hard work. But actually, when you're young, you've got the least to lose. Obviously everyone's circumstances are different, but these are the years to put in the effort. And the earlier you do it, the quicker you can achieve financial success and business success. The easier life becomes later on. It's much harder when you're 50 years old to start up a business and start something new. You've got so much more to lose. Your expenses are high. You've got a family. You've got responsibilities. When you're younger, of course, there's things to lose and there's a risk involved, but it's actually less. Probably just going back to the question, the thing I would say is work hard. Nothing comes without hard work.
That was a good one, for sure. Now, moving on. So you talked about Frank, and I now want to cover Andrew Bloch Associates. So could you please tell us a bit more about that, what you're doing now, and how you started with it?
Sure. So I think that I absolutely loved my time running an agency, but there were bits I didn't enjoy. And I think if I was to summarize it, it's probably, I love doing PR. loved helping to build brands, help them grow, make commercial success. But I was spending a lot of my time looking at spreadsheets, dealing with people, HR issues, and less time actually doing the work. So when I set up Andrew Bloch Associates, for me, one of the key things was I don't want to have staff. I want to figure out a model whereby I can work with other people, but I don't have to employ them. And I also wanted to look at what was I good at and what wasn't I good at. I enjoyed doing the work, and that's where I wanted to focus my attention. So I figured out a way to do that. And I wanted to be able to give back, going back to what I was saying earlier, something to the industry that had given me everything, allowed me to be in the position I was in. So I've broken down my career into sort of 3 or 4 different segments. So the first part is mergers and acquisitions. So I buy and sell marketing services agencies for other people. So if you're a management consultancy or you're a big marketing services group and you are looking for a social media agency, a data agency, an influencer agency, a PR agency, I help find the best agencies on the market that are out there without necessarily having a for sale sign on the door. And equally, these agencies come to me and they ask me to find them a home. And it's about being able to use my experience and my knowledge to create the best fit, to make them a lot of money, but also find them the right home where they're going to be fulfilled in the next stage of their journey. So that's one part. Second part of it is helping big brands find the right agencies. So I work together with an organization called AAR to help brands put in place the right mix for their marketing requirements. So whether that be recently things I've worked on, for example, helping Starbucks find a social media agency, helping Greggs find a PR agency and a social media agency, helping Holland and Barrett find PR social. So I run those pitches and I use my years of previously useless knowledge of the agency world to help the client find the best fit for them. I then sit on the board of various different companies, helping advise them essentially on how to grow and how to build their business. So I do that for several companies. And some of those I've invested in. Earlier this year, I invested in a group of companies called Stacked, which is a PR agency called Munch, a social media agency called Flabbergast, a web design and UX company called Another Blank Page, and then a SaaS tech platform that helps match pre-vetted PR freelancers with brands, clients that don't necessarily need a full agency resource. They just want an individual. That business is called Nibble. So for that, I've actually put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, as well as taking a position as a non-exec chairman. I then do my work with Lord Sugar and the Apprentice winners, which is kind of quite hands-on PR and marketing. And then as part of my experience that I've built with Lord Sugar in terms of talent management, I help brands and event organizers find talent to speak at their events, to endorse their brands. And, over the course of the last couple of years, I've worked with everyone from, Karen Brady, Piers Morgan, Roddy O'Sullivan, Peter Jones, will.i.am, Anthony Joshua. I've helped them do brand endorsement deals, sponsorship deals, speaker deals, which I really enjoy. And then the final bit is the kind of giving back bit. So I mentioned to you the School of Communication Arts and the School of Marketing. I also work for the Prince's Trust, helping young people develop business plans, get funding, get their businesses off the ground. I work with a few charities. I've just joined the business committee of an amazing charity called Grief Encounter, which helps people that have sadly gone through bereavement deal with their losses, mainly children and young people. I work with Variety, the children's charity, as part of their entertainment committee and the Variety Awards, and a number of other charities. And that's my way, I think, of trying to give back to the industry and use, PR is a lot of fun. You work on lots of ridiculous things that, don't really add purpose. They might put a smile on someone's face or brighten up someone's day, but they're not changing the world. I never have wanted to go solely into the area of purpose and CSR, but I like to be able to give something back. So being able to use my skills to help charities and help education and help young people, for me, is a real privilege. And I sort of, when I set up Andrew Bloch and Associates, I set myself the challenge of spending 20% of my time doing that, which, to be honest, I don't monitor to the hour, but broadly speaking, I've been doing that for the last 4 years, and it's a big part of what I do.
I think one thing I've taken away is by talking about this amazing platform you have, being able to dedicate your time to do a lot of amazing things. How do you use this to put yourself out there? Was it tough at first? Or are you always used to putting yourself out there when it comes to maximizing these opportunities to build your network, but also giving a platform for others to maximize their experiences as well? And was this like the chance or the possibility where you are putting yourself out there? Did this come from co-founding Frank, or was this something you got used to or are normalized doing when you founded Andrew Bloch and Associates?
It's a really interesting question. And I think, as PR people, we're good at communicating. I mean, at the end of the day, that's our job. When I was running Frank, I found it very easy because I could hide behind the Frank brand, and I would push out our work. I'd push out thought pieces. I'd applaud the team, but it wasn't me. And then when I went out on my own, I realized, well, it's my name above the door. I can't hide behind anyone. I've got to do it. And I think the key to building a personal brand, if you want to call it that, you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. And I think I'm actually a bit of an introvert, which might sound strange for someone who works in the communications industry, but I'd always rather be behind someone, making them famous rather than myself. So the way that I did it was I just talked about what I was doing in a fairly factual, flat, matter-of-fact way. And what I found was, if I said, I've just done this, and I posted it on LinkedIn or on Twitter, X or Instagram, or whatever platform I posted it, I would find that people with a similar requirement would say, oh, I saw you did that. Could we have a chat? And I've just continued to do that. As I complete a campaign, as I win a new client or get appointed to a new position, I'd just announce it in a matter-of-fact way. I think, I look at a lot of the younger entrepreneurs that are starting out. Their style of doing it is very different. They will have video crews following them around. They'll be cutting up amazing content, pushing that out on channels. It's beautifully edited. It's captioned. It's not my style. I don't think I would ever feel comfortable doing that. So I do it in the way that feels very natural to me, and it works. I'm not saying it couldn't be better or more polished or achieve better results. But ultimately, when you work in this industry, the most important thing is your reputation. And if you do a good job, others will do your marketing for you. So I pride myself on doing the best possible job I can do. I don't take on anything that I don't believe I can make a success of. And I don't believe you'll speak to many people that will say anything negative about me in terms of the work I've done, how I've treated something, because I'm very, very considered in that. And I think that's probably the thing that has stood me in the best place. Your reputation is so valuable. So even if you are creating all this amazing content online, if you're not very good at what you do, that's just a veneer that once you scratch the surface, people figure that out. I almost do it the other way. My content is average at best. But if you ask people about me and you ask people about the work they do, and I don't mean this to sound arrogant, but as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, it sounds really arrogant. But I am good at what I do, and I know that people will endorse me. And that's the power of PR. Advertising, you pay for a space, you say what you want within rules and regulation. PR is third-party endorsement. If I tell you I'm great, I'm advertising myself. If someone asks you, what do you think of Andrew? And you say, Andrew's brilliant. He did this job for me, achieved amazing results, wouldn't hesitate to recommend him. That is so much more powerful. And that's what you have to always remember. Have substance. It's no problem having style in terms of getting yourself out there. You've got to have substance. No one wants all style, no substance.
That was really interesting because I found your way of explaining the answer comparing to the younger generation or us with now using social media as our platform to create our brand or our business. Whereas for you, when you started out, obviously you first of all co-founded Frank during the millennium period, and then you founded Andrew Bloch and Associates during COVID time. But also right now, a part of me is wondering, how do you have the time to manage all of these responsibilities that you have from what you're doing? Because I'm also the type of person that loves to have a lot of things going on where I am busy, but sometimes we always have to keep in mind that we have to prioritize ourselves first. At the end of the day, our health always comes first, and mental health wise as well. So how do you just deal with burnout and you having to manage so many different projects at the same time?
Yeah, it's a really important point. So I said earlier on, I think one of the key strengths that you need to have in this industry is resilience. I think the second key strength I would say is the ability to manage your time. One of the great positives is there's lots going on. One of the negatives is sometimes that can become overwhelming, overbearing. You have to learn to manage your time. You have to be self-aware. You have to understand the difference between urgent and important. And in this industry, there is lots of urgent things going on, phone calls from clients demanding short time frames to get stuff done. There's also lots of important stuff you need to do. So thinking time, planning time, strategic time. So you need to sort of balance the two and make sure you're doing the important stuff as well as the urgent stuff. And you need to understand yourself. You need to understand your triggers of when and too much is too much. And actually, for someone like me, that's quite difficult because I thrive on being busy. I thrive on pressure. Actually, the bit when I get stressed is when the phone's not ringing or I have an unusually quiet day or week. I think what's going wrong. I find that hard to deal with. But you need to know when to switch off. And I think also in culture now, we're working from home a lot and it's much more hybrid. It's brilliant in many ways, but a big negative is the barriers are sort of gone in terms of 9 to 5. And especially like I do, I have clients all over the world. I've got clients in Saudi Arabia, in America, in Australia, New Zealand. It's 24/7 in terms of the demands. You have to put barriers in place. And actually, my girlfriend is teaching me to put my phone in a drawer at 7 o'clock at night and leave it for the evening, which I find hard, but it's good. You've got to switch off. You've got to realize what's important. As part of my 20% of time that isn't about making money, it's about doing good and giving back. Within that is also my kids. I want to be there for the school concert, for the cricket match, for the football game. I want to pick them up from school and drop them off. That time you don't ever get back. And when that is suffering, you've got to look at yourself and do something about it. I do think sometimes we need to build up a bit more resilience. We all have busy days. We all have shit days. We all have stressful days. That doesn't mean you take a week off, but take the time to recharge. Weekends are weekends. Family time is family time, but don't, crumble at the first thing. You've got to build up a bit of toughness, a bit of resilience. I'm not the best at it. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask because honestly, I could work 24/7, would never complain. And at some stage it would catch up with me and it would be unsustainable. For me, I listen to my body when I'm tired. I'm tired. When I don't feel like working, I don't work. And I think, grown up enough to recognize that. But there have been times, I remember when we started the company, I didn't take a holiday for the first 9 months because I thought it would all collapse if I took 2 minutes off. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but I was tired and I got on holiday and actually, I was ill when I got on holiday because my body just suddenly collapsed. You've got to take regular breaks, and I'm a big fan of making sure that I get away at least 4 times a year, but not necessarily 2-week, 3-week holidays, but at least a long weekend or a bit of time in a different environment because it is a stressful industry. And I think one of the benefits I have is I'm in control of my own time. Sometimes when you work for someone else, you don't have that luxury, you're under pressure. But I think employers are much, much better at recognizing the pressures of the industry and the stresses. And, in some ways I might have been better if I had someone managing me that would force me to shut down and not work all the time. But when you love what you do, you don't mind it. And actually, if you said to me, would you rather watch some crap on TV or just sit in front of the TV with it off? checking your emails and getting on top of it. I would tell you that the latter relaxes me. I don't mind it. It's okay. But you've got to be self-aware and place your own limits, I think.
Thank you for that answer. It was really insightful, I'd say. Now, the last question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Probably doing the same.
Okay.
I'm not one for 5-year plans. As stupid as this sounds, my barometer is when I wake up in the morning, do I look forward to working? And my genuine answer is, as long as in 5 years' time I'm getting out of bed and looking forward to working, I will still be working. But I'm also, I've learnt the moment you don't enjoy something, it's not giving you satisfaction, you're not fulfilling yourself, you've got to do something about that and make that change. So what I would think would happen over the next 5 years is there'll be various bits in my portfolio which are going really well and I'm really enjoying. And there'll be other bits that for whatever reason, they're not giving me the personal or professional fulfillment I want. So I will balance that out and do more of the stuff I like and less of the stuff I don't like. But I don't see myself doing anything dramatically different. I'm incredibly lucky to have found something that I enjoy, that I'm pretty good at, that rewards me financially, but also mentally stimulates me. So there's no need for massive change. I'm not driven purely by money. And I'm a great believer that if you do great work, everything else follows that. So I don't set myself financial targets. I obviously look at money and see what's coming in. And it's always nice to grow and make more, because that, I think, is an indicator that what you're doing is working and it's successful. But I'm not sitting here saying in 5 years I want to be earning X or I want to achieve that. My main motivator is just enjoying what I do, because it is the biggest luxury you can have, to enjoy what you do. So that's all I really want. Slightly different if you're younger. I think when you're younger, yes, you should have targets and you should look at what you want to achieve based on what peers in your industry have achieved, or what you personally want to achieve, or where you think you need to get to, and to be able to afford what you want in life. But for me, it's sort of different. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve financially. That's not my driving motivator. My driving motivator is to enjoy it and to do great work, because, I also don't want to be enjoying it and doing a bad job. I think it's all kind of linked together somehow. So that is a really terrible answer to give you, but it's the truth. In 5 years, I want to enjoy it as much as I'm enjoying it now.
I mean, it was an interesting answer. I mean, I liked how you put a spin or twist on the fact that it might have not given the best answer per se, but it was still very useful for maybe people like me who are still in the early stages of my career, or people who are maybe halfway, whereas you've achieved what you wanted to achieve throughout your years. And you're now, I guess, for you, what's maybe next is exactly what you said, is just to enjoy what you're doing. And that's probably that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is. We spend a lot of time working, so you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Andrew, for joining us here today. If people would like to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I'm pretty easy to find if you Google me, but my website is andrewbloch.co.uk. You can find me on X at Andrew Bloch, on Instagram at Blockstagram, on LinkedIn, Andrew Bloch, TikTok, Andrew Bloch. You'll find me if you want to find me.
Excellent. And for those that are watching, make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, and stay tuned for a new guest coming soon. Thank you once again, Andrew. See you guys soon.
Pleasure. Lovely talking to you.